Today in the bunker, we're going to build an airport terminal suitable for the wasteland. Since I've already managed to lose some of the footage I originally shot for this project, let's kind of recap what I've done so far. This was partially glued together, very strangely. Don't really understand why it was done the way it was done, but I cut that ladder off of the roof so that it would make the roof removable for the tower, and we're going to detail some of that. I've had to very carefully kind of pry that roof bit off. You can see where there was some glue. I had to sand or file that out. This roof piece is quite warped, so we're going to see if we can do something about that. And then there's a piece, I had to cut all of these joints off, or cut them apart rather, inside, and then filed them so that this would fit back together nicely. This was assembled, but it wasn't like fully tightened together. I don't really understand what happened. I don't know if it was somebody did it and they were very, very young, or someone did it and they were somewhat infirm. I don't know, but they didn't use too much glue, so it's all right. We got it apart, so not a problem. All right, so we're going to tidy up some of these bits. We need to make a replacement piece for this wall here, so we'll fix that and we'll start getting this put together. Word of warning, and I've mentioned this previously, and you may remember this if you've watched my other builds, these old kits are very brittle. I was trying to somewhat judiciously bend this back to be straight, and it immediately snapped on one of these lines. So not a huge deal, easy to glue back together, you won't really notice it. It's not in a place where, like down in that seam, it's fine. That's actually kind of the perfect place for it to break. So we'll get this finished gluing and get that repaired. While those bits are drying, the railing on the top, the two end pieces were broken off. So I just took some plastic rod, or evergreen rod, which is plastic rod, and put that in there. You could use wire, you could use some wood. It just depends on how kind of rough and ready you want to make that look. Fitting the sidewalls on, even the one that's not broken, is a little tricky. You've got these kind of door bits that are sort of access gates out to the airfield itself. Ideally, you'd want to fence in so that this was an actual gate. Not really necessary, just kind of adds to the look. But that slots into the sidewall. Goes down in there pretty snug. And then that whole structure slots here like that. So you have to put this in first before you can put that on, otherwise you end up cutting a tab off or whatever. So we're going to kind of get this glued together, at least the front part, and see what we can make straight. With all the appropriate joints glued together, still a little bit wonky, but that's all right. The roof comes off. We're going to make a base for this, and then we'll get ready to prime. We will also fix that portion of the wall that's broken right there too. I just noticed these two holes here. There's supposed to be an awning that goes across the front of this. So I think we're going to scratch build something to replace that, just a short one, so it doesn't bang into other things when it's in storage. That'll kind of improve the look. Something else I'm going to add are some like flower boxes to the front so we can put some dead foliage in there. That'll really give it kind of a little bit of a spark of life. If maybe that's not the best way to put it, but it'll give it some more visual interest. After a little bit of measuring, I took a piece of foam core and cut out a piece that would fit, and then took some of the aluminum sculpting wire, because it fits this hole perfectly, and drove that into the foam core. I'm going to glue it in place. So that'll hold it. That's fairly even. We're going to put some trim on it and dress it up a little bit, but we'll get that done and put that on there. To dress up the edge of this, I just cut some bits of drink carton, 5 millimeters wide, And then just take those strips and just glue them on the edge with some PVA. They don't have to be perfect, you know, post-apocalyptic. It's out in the wasteland, it's fine. We're gonna put some rust detail and everything on there, but that'll cover that up nicely. And until you pull it off. Don't do that. All right, I've gone ahead and cut out a base, and for this I just used matte board, but you could use chipboard or whatever. I have sealed this with sanding sealer. You could just put several layers of paint. I can't speak. We're going to hot glue this all together, and we will take our piece that we made. We're going to go ahead and put some texture on that so it'll look like it's gravel, and then we'll get ready and start priming. To texture that bit, we're going to use some of this Vallejo ground texture. We're just going to stipple it on. If you don't happen to have that, you can use some very fine sand and some PVA. You could use some baking soda and some PVA. I would put the PVA down in a very thin coat and then sprinkle the rest of that on there and let that dry. This also works as a concrete texture, or it makes a very fine texture for rust. It all depends on how you paint it and dry brush it afterwards. It's very versatile. All right, that was a little fiddly. Had to get the glue gun in there to glue it down. It's not the neatest job in the world, but it'll work. I don't really do really detailed interiors on these anyway, so not a big deal. If you were going to do something that needed to be a little neater, you could easily do this in sections. Just, you know, put the hot glue on there, put the piece on, and just very carefully get in there and go around it that way. Or you could use something like contact cement, or even PVA. I've PVA'd these buildings down before, and it works fine. So if it needed to be neat, you can make it neat. It's not a problem. I just use hot glue because it's fast and it's fairly strong. One other addition I put on was the flower boxes I had mentioned earlier. I just took some balsa pieces and put them down there, but you could use thin strips of cardboard or whatever just to give that a defined edge. And then we'll put some sand, we'll glue some sand in there, and then we can add our dead plants or whatever as we go. All right, after applying some primer, and I just did a black spray paint and then a gray zenithal. Certain parts like this roof I just left black. I didn't hit it with gray. So we can go back and pick out all of the doors and windows. We're going to sponge paint this with some color, put some staining on it, and just kind of generally dirty it up for the apocalypse. I went back and taped off the bottom of the tower and then spray painted the inside and the outside frame black. That'll speed up that process. These window struts are going to be gunmetal, and we're going to apply some rust and whatnot, so that'll be faster than trying to paint all that in with a brush. So I'm going to get started doing the window frames and the doors, and we'll do those with a gunmetal color. And to paint that, we're just going to use some craft paint, just some gunmetal craft paint. Just got my crappy palette here because I don't put the metallics on my good palette. And then we're just going to cut in anywhere we need that to be. And we'll go back and put a wash on that to help define it, and then we'll add some rusty bits also. And this is a place where neatness counts, but I start with the metallic because if I get another color onto this later, it's way easier to touch this up than it is trying to get metallic off of something I've already painted. One of the things you'll notice about this building is it has a lot of doors and windows. So still picking those out with metallic. To add some color overall, I've painted in the ground texture. I'm just sponging on or stippling with an old brush where the tight spots. Just some tan. We're going to go back over that with a little bit of white just to give it kind of a dirty, kind of worn appearance. And then we're going to go make another sign for this. We'll glue that in place and start putting some rusting on. We're going to add some highlights to this. We're also going to dry brush where we've painted the roof portions black, except for up here. This is metal. So we're going to put some rusting on that along with the ladder and all that. We're going to paint that door. and then we'll go ahead and make a sign and add that to our terminal. It doesn't show up great on camera, but I ended up just dry brushing. This roof already had texture on it. I just used the same tan that I used for the walls when I sponged that on or stippled. This helped kind of tie it together with that. It gave it a little bit more definition. So not super bright, but seems to work pretty well. To weather the metal bits, I'm not sure how well this is going to come out on camera, but I took and sponged on just some nutmeg color. I may go back and put some highlights on there of a brighter orange, just for more active rust. And then anywhere I couldn't get the brush, or the sponge rather, I just used a brush and stippled it on, like on these vents and on these windows. That way you don't slop it all over onto your wall sections. And then with the same thing with the doors and windows here, probably take a couple of coats on those, but we'll get those a nice rusty texture. All right, we're just going to add the rust until we're happy with it. For me, that's a good spot right there. I'm not sure how well that shows up on camera, but it gives a pretty rusty appearance. So you could make it less rusty, more rusty. You can put more orange on there to make it newer rust. The darker it is, the older the rust it is. Same thing with the top. So we're going to call that good, I think. I had originally intended to put some plastic windows in there, but in the interest of time and trying to get this video done, I'm going to skip that. I may come back and put that on there. Also, we've got our sunshade here at the front, which we did, the same way, dry brushed up with tan and gray. I'm going to go make a sign. We'll glue that on, and then we'll take, we have to put our grass and stuff in our flower beds. After adding all of the rust effects, I went and added the grass, some static grass. In this case, it's Harvest Gold from Woodland Scenics. I added a few of the Army Painter Mountain Tufts, and I added some of these fall/dead flowers from Mini Nature, Shortweed Tufts, Autumn. And that really gave that kind of a pop of a little bit of color, but it's dead color, so it's appropriate. So I'm pretty happy with that. All right, there's our signage added, and I just did that the usual way I do them on these projects. I print that out on a color printer. I just Mod Podge it to a piece of mat board or some chipboard, and then I glue that onto the model. In this case, I wasn't going to put a frame, but I ended up putting some pieces of very thin wood behind that just to give it more strength. A lot of times you don't even have to do that. And we've got our plants, and all in all, it came out pretty good. There's a lot more you could do to this, add a lot of washes, just kind of dirty it up even more, but I want this video to be done. So I'm going to leave this here for now, and we may revisit this. Next build we're going to do is going to be the hangar. So it'll be a set with this, and we'll make some tarmac and some other things to go with it. Hopefully this was helpful. I hope you guys enjoyed this project, and hopefully it will inspire you to make something awesome. And I hope you guys have a fantastic day.